painting of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. He has so many different names. What's your favorite name? We've been hearing when the birth ceremony was performed, there were two main names that were given. One was Nimai, the ladies liked that one, and the astrologer liked Vishvambar. Vishvambar, he who maintains the universe by freely giving love of God. Gauranga is another nice name. His limbs, angas, were Gora, golden. Sometimes just Gora, like Gora Nitai, Gora, and many other names. Sri Krishna Caitanya. So his appearance day was one day more, or is one day more. And here's a painting from the British Times, a painting of the city of Navadvip near the bank of the river Ganges. And a description, there's a nice description in the 12th canto, chapter 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam, of the avatars that appear in each yuga. It's a nice discussion. It's a discussion. Narada was visiting Dwarka. And while Narada was visiting Dwarka, Krishna's father, Vasudeva, became inspired. We've discussed so many things, but I've never really asked him about Tattva, Vishnu Tattva. So he invited him to his home or palace in Dwarka and presented a number of questions. And among those questions, there was a question, please describe the avatars that appear in each of the 4 yugas. So what Narada did was what you're supposed to do. He made reference to previous authority. So his answer was what previous authority said on that topic. And there's long, long ago, the Navayogendras. Who are the Navayogendras? The Navayogendras are sons of Rishabdev. Rishabdev had 100 sons, and the chief of those 100 sons was Bharata. And a number of the sons became Kshatriyas, a number of the sons became Brahmanas, and 9 of those sons became perfected souls like Narada. And they're the Navayogendras. So the Navayogendras had not only spiritual perfection, they had mystic perfection, and they could travel. They didn't even need a vina. They just traveled where they wanted to go. And they traveled on one occasion to visit the palace of King Nimi. And King Nimi was conducting a yajna when they arrived. And as they arrived, they came, it's a beautiful painting. They were soaring through the air and were just hovering in the air. They didn't even come in for a landing. And Nimi stopped his sacrifice, stood up with folded palms, offered them all respect. And the whole mood changed from performing a yajna to asking questions. And he asked some of the same questions that Vasudeva asked Narada. So Narada was giving the answers by giving the Navayogendra's answers. So one of them was, who are the incarnations of the Supreme Lord in each of the 4 yugas? And the last section of that chapter is Canto 12, Chapter 3, has this verse. Krishnavarnam Trisha Krishnam Sangopangastra Parshadam Yagyai Sankirtana Prayayar Yajantihi Sumedasaha. Now this is a verse that precedes what I just mentioned. We'll get to the one I just mentioned. This is from the 11th Canto Bhagavatam. In the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead, who constantly sings the names of Krishna. Although his complexion is not black as he is Krishna himself, he is accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions. Krishna Varnam, he's in the category of Krishna, but he's Trisha Krishna, he's not blackish like Krishna. And Sangha, Upanga, and Astra, and Parshadams, he comes along with his associate servants' weapons, his astras. What are his weapons? Mridanga cartels, right? You don't kill people with mridanga cartels. You kill demoniac mentality with the loud chanting of the holy name. We find in Caitanya Charitamrita, the author, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, gives three technology is great when it works. And when it doesn't work, it's not so great. So we're going to discuss 3 external purposes and then 3 internal purposes, straight from Caitanya Charitamrita. So one of those external purposes was to establish the Yuga Dharma, which is what I was just about to describe. So in the age of Krita Yuga or Satya Yuga, Dhyayate, process of meditation. All these arrows are pointing to perfection. And in Treta Yuga, performance of Vedic sacrifice, yajna. And in the following Dwapara Yuga, temple worship. And in the age of Kali, chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So here's the verse I was referring to. Krite yadhyayato Vishnum. So that Krita is another word for Satya, so the first of the 4 yugas. Dhyayato, or meditation. And Tretayam, in the Treta Yuga, Yajato Makai, the performance of Vedic sacrifice, Yajna, Makai. And Dwapara Yuga, the age in which Krishna appeared, the deity worship in the temple, the Archana process. And this age of Kali is Hari Kirtana. Whatever result was obtained in Satya Yuga by meditating on Vishnu, in Treta Yuga by performing sacrifices, and in Dwapara Yuga by serving the Lord's lotus feet, can be obtained in Kali Yuga simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So one of the 3 external purposes, to perform the function of the Yuga avatar, that is, delivering, generally the Yuga avatar appears towards the beginning of the Yuga and sets the stage or the tone, the procedure for the rest of the age. So Lord Chaitanya appeared early in the age of Kali, and he established this Yuga Dharma, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. The second reason described by Krishnadas Kaviraj for Lord Chaitanya's appearance was Advaita Acharya. And Advaita Acharya's fervent prayer to the personality of God to make his appearance, because Advaita Acharya, as you can see, he's a little older than Lord Chaitanya. He was the foremost of all the Vaishnavas in the land, in Navadvip. And as he was moving about Navadvip, and he also had understanding of beyond Navadvip, there was the worship of Lord Vishnu had gone down. And instead, the qualified brahmanas, while they were learned in the scripture, they were applying that Brahminical capacity to do karmakanda rituals. Very strong, prevalent, too much, and obscuring the conclusion of Vaishnavism. So he felt that the best thing for this situation was for the Supreme Lord to appear. So he recalled the verse from the scripture that says, what he's doing right here in the painting, if one offers to the Supreme Lord a palm full of Ganges water and the leaves of Tulsi and prays to him with all sincerity, he will fulfill that desire. So in a loud voice, he called for the personality of God to make his appearance. In Chaitanya Bhagavat, Mahaprabhu says, you woke me up. I was in mystic slumber, and your chanting was so loud. You were calling for me to come, so I came. So that was the second external reason, the fervent appeal of Advaita Acharya for an incarnation of the Lord to come. And the third reason, external reason, given by Krishnadas Kaviraj and Chaitanya Charitamrita was Krishna was wanting to fulfill his promise. He makes some promises and he fulfills them. And one of those promises found in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, you all know this verse, and then the next one, so we'll say them together. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. You know the meaning. Yada yada hi dharmasya. From time to time, when there's dharmasya glani, or there's discrepancy in execution of dharma, bhavati, when that arises, abhyutanam adharmasya tatatmanam srajamyaham. He comes to restore the principles of dharma. And paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya taduskritam dharma sangstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So we have to recite these verses because it's so important and central to the advent of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that we'll be honoring tomorrow. So he's fulfilling, he makes his promise, yuge yuge, from age to age. When there's discrepancy in dharma, I appear. So he's appearing for this third, and the expression is external. Now that seems pretty intrinsic, it's pretty important. But external as opposed to internal means his own personal desire. There's a long section in Chaitanya Charitamrita where Krishna is meditating on the loving mood of Srimati Radharani. And he's trying to estimate how much love she has for him. And he can't, although I'm the personality of Godhead, I can't even estimate the love that she has for me. And the only way I could experience the love that she has for me is if I was the subject instead of the object. Now, it's a grammatical term, but it's also, an important understanding in the terminology of bhakti. So like, regular sentence, subject, object, and verb. Everyone knows that one. So in relationships, there's also subject, object. the person holding love is the subject, and the object or the person whom they love is the object. And there's the feelings of love that from them to the object. And then the love that's from the subject to the object also reverses. And the object also loves the subject. And then it becomes, that's a loving exchange. And it's back and forth, and back and forth, and back and forth. That's a loving exchange. So Krishna is the object of love of Radharani, and Krishna is wondering three things. These are the three internal reasons for Lord Chaitanya's appearing. And it's mysterious. But as the personality of Godhead, try as I may, I'm the Supreme Lord. I can't experience what the subject feels towards the object. I have to become the subject. So he wants to feel or experience the love that Radharani has for him. He wants to appreciate the qualities in him that she appreciates, and the transcendental emotion that Radharani has in her love for him. He wants all three. And so he comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself, but whose body is of the same golden bodily luster as Radha. And he has the mood of love or the bhava of Radharani. Now, some of you like Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I'm told that there's sets of Chaitanya Charitamrita. If you don't have a set of Chaitanya Charitamrita in your home, they're available. And I'm encouraging you, if you don't have, please get, because I'm making references here and there from Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it's very fundamental, as much as understanding Krishna's appearance, understanding Lord Chaitanya's appearance for us is equally important, because he's the Yogavatar. He's teaching us the means of achieving spiritual perfection for this age, and he's showing the way by which the love that the residents of Vrindavan have for Krishna, unlike exists in Vaikuntha. Very, very special kind of love. And even more particularly, the love that the gopis feel for Krishna. There's a nice verse, amongst many nice verses. The very first commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam in the line of Lord Chaitanya was a disciple of Advaita Acharya. Before, there were prior commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam, Sridhar Swami, but in the line of Lord Chaitanya, the first was this devotee named Srinath Chakravarti. Advaita Acharya lived in West Bengal, and Srinath lived in West Bengal. And one of the lines in the invocation verse to his commentary, Ramya Kachit Upasana Vrajavadu Vargena Va Kalpita. It's really nice. Ramya Kachit, it's very pleasing, very sweet and very pleasing, is the upasana or the worship of the Vrajavadu, the ladies or the gopis of Vraja. Vrajavadu, Vargena, the groups of the gopis that worship Krishna. Ramya Kachit, Upasana, Vrajavadu, Vargena, Va Kalpita, that they performed. So Lord Chaitanya taught this introduction or invocation verse says, Lord Chaitanya taught that the highest form of worship of Krishna is that which is found in the gopis and the way and the pleasure that they experience. So he wanted to experience that pleasure that they experience, the happiness that they experience, and specifically that Radharani experiences. So those of you that have Caitanya Charitamrita, it's nice if you tomorrow and whenever, but in honor of Lord Chaitanya's appearance, read some verses. In the first set of verses, they're introductory verses to the whole book, and the rest of the book is an expansion of those introductory verses. One of them was composed by a dear associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Puri, and he explains who Lord Chaitanya is in that verse. It's nice. Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Ladani Shakti Asmat Ekatmanav Api Bhuvi Pura Deha Bedha Gatautau. He's saying, in the spiritual world, there are these two, Beda, so difference. And there's the Radha and there's Krishna. But those two, Radha and Krishna, they're eternally manifest in two different features, although one entity. Ekatmanav api bhuvi pura beda deha. One entity manifest in two forms, Radha, Krishna. One entity manifest in two forms, and one of those two forms is the Ladini Shakti, that's Radharani. One entity eternally manifest in two forms, Krishna and the pleasure potency of Krishna, but one entity. Just like the sun and the sunshine. It's very easy to understand. The shine is not identical with the sun, that this shine is the energy of the sun. But they're inseparable. There's one entity. You won't find shine without sun. You won't find sun without shine. They're inseparable, but they're not the same. So similarly, Radha, Krishna are eternally manifest in two forms, although one entity. And the next line says, when those two become one entity, they take on that's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who takes on the luster, Radha duty suvalitam. He takes on the duty, the luster of Radha, and the bhava of Radha. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself, what it's saying on the screen here. He's Krishna himself, but he's taking on the mood and the complexion of Radha. I'll say it again, and again, and again. It's really nice. Krishna himself, but not in the mood or the luster of Krishna, because Krishna is blackish, he's not golden. And Krishna, when he takes on the mood of Radha, he has the complexion of Radha, or Gaura, golden complexion. And he has the mood of love for Krishna that Radha has for Krishna, which is quite amazing. And so, because you can't taste that happiness of a relationship with the object unless you're the subject. So he's the all-powerful Supreme. It's a mystery. It's a profound mystery. Purely it's a profound mystery. Because there isn't any other incarnation like this. Although there's many, many, many incarnations. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears, he appears just after Krishna appears and performs his pastimes in Vrindavan. So let's do this one. And each day of Brahma, how many manus are there? 14 manus, is that right? 14 manus. And each manu, all those 14 manus span over 1,000 yuga cycles. So you divide 14 into 1,000, it doesn't come into an even number. So it's 71 plus some sandhi, some juncture between them to make up 1,000 yuga cycles. So in other words, when there's a change of manu, there's a sandhi. It's like when it's dawn, it's neither night nor day, or dusk, it's neither day nor night. So there's a sandhi, there's a juncture between the two. So like that. So Krishna appears once in those 1,000 yuga cycles. Krishna appears during the manu number 7. Yes? Manu number 7 is just before midway because there's another 7. So Vaivasvata Manu is the present Manu. And Krishna appears during the 28th yuga cycle of the 71 that Vaivasvata Manu presides over. And after Krishna departs, that's when Lord Chaitanya appears. And we just happened to be right after Lord Chaitanya appeared. Out of the 1,000 yuga cycles, it's pretty special. Yes? Unique. Very unique. We're very fortunate. Now, it's a mystery, and I'll lead you into the mystery, and then we'll try to take you a little more deeply into the mystery. Not, everything, but something. So we were discussing this a little bit the other day. He asked a question. Why did Lord Chaitanya take sannyas? So here's the question in a different language. Is there any other avatar who accepted the sannyas order of life, leaving behind his Swarup Shakti as a widow? Can you think of any avatar, form of the Lord, who took sannyas? There is none. And not only he took sannyas, but he wasn't like a brahmachari then became a sannyasi, because Kapila Dev didn't marry. He just was renounced his whole life, etc. But one who became married, and who is he married to? He's married to his Swarup Shakti. That means Swarup Shakti means his own personal potency. And then he took sannyas. What's the purpose of all this, and how to understand the mystery of all this? So that's the Sherlock Holmes effort we're doing tonight. Why did he do this? So beyond our discussion, Kevala Bhakti was asking the question, so I'm pointing to him. Someone pointed out to me, reminded me of a verse that comes in the first chapter of Canto 5, Srimad Bhagavatam, kind of, not in an expected place, but Prabhupada is describing Priya Vrata. I won't go into who is Priya Vrata. You can look it up later. Priya Vrata was renounced, and then he became married. So in the commentary, Prabhupada's purport, he writes like this. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's first wife died, his mother requested him to marry for a second time. He was 20 years old and was going to take sannyas at the age of 24. Yet, by the request of his mother, he married. Quote, as long as I am in household life, he told his mother, I must have a wife, for household life does not mean staying in a house. Real household life means living in a house with a wife. Unquote. Now, this is Prabhupada's purport, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. He's omniscient. He knows what's going to happen 4 years later. That was partly the question. If he knew he was going to be taking sannyas 4 years later, why did he marry? Sounds not nice. And for that matter, why did he take sannyas anyways? Because he's the personality of Godhead. And for those that understood him as the personality of Godhead, that was a problem. He's going to undergo austerities, and he's the personality of Godhead. What? It was unbearable. We discussed this a little bit this midday, Jagatananda, Pandit. He knew he was also a sannyasi, but he didn't like the idea that he was going to undergo any austerities. Because he's the personality of Godhead. Why austerities? So he'd like to give him nice things. And Lord Chaitanya had to refuse the nice things. One of the things we heard today was he with his own hand, he made a whole clay pot filled with sandalwood oil. Another time he made a nice bed. Went lots of trouble to make a nice bed. And Lord Chaitanya refused it. I'm a sannyasi. I can't sleep in a nice bed. People will laugh at me. That's not what sannyasa is meant for. And Jagatananda was upset because he didn't want to see Lord Chaitanya sleeping on the bare floor, which is what he was doing. So his personal servant, Govinda, took the fibers of some kind of plant and wove the fibers together to make like a little mat, kind of like what people do with a yoga mat kind of thing. Only it wasn't foam, it was just fibers of a plant. And Lord Chaitanya accepted that. So, he is the personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, undergoing austerities. And he's Krishna himself. What kind of example is this? He knows he's going to take sannyas in 4 years and he marries. What kind of example is this? Now, I mentioned Swarup Shakti. Have we know of any of the, I'm going back to the question. Any incarnation, any avatar of the Lord that accepted sannyas? No such thing. And he married and then renounced his wife? Now, there were mentioned are two. In this little purport that's on the screen here, he had a first wife. Her name was Lakshmi Priya. Lakshmi Priya died out of feelings of separation because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had gone to East Bengal, and he was gone for a long time, and in the mood of separation from Lord Chaitanya, she expired. And poor Mother Sachi, she was living in the home with Mother Sachi, and she's now, her daughter-in-law has expired. So she requested her son, please marry again. So he married again. So these potencies, we read this, we discussed this already, from Chaitanya Bhagavat. That's another one of the biographies of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life. It's it's the second verse of the whole book. Vishnu Priya was the second wife. She's the Bhu Shakti of the personality of Godhead. Lakshmi Priya, the first wife, is the Sri Shakti, and it's mentioned the Lila Shakti is the Dham, or Lila Shakti, the Navadvip itself. The painting is a little out of place because it's showing Vishnu Priya holding the arm of her husband, who is no longer her husband. And he has a shaved head, so he's already taken sannyas. There's a sannyas danda leaning against his shoulder. So it's a little out of place. The artist got carried away. But standing by the tree, that's meant to be his mother, Mother Sachi, and Vishnu Priya. Vishnu Priya. So these terms, Bhu Shakti and Sri Shakti, this is a photograph of the Ranganath deity in Sri Rangam. And if you've ever been there, in front of the Ranganath deity, there's the Utsav Murti, very small Murti, in the front. And by one side and the other side are Bhu Shakti and Sri Shakti, and they're essential parts of worship. So as in deity worship in Sri Rangam, in many places in South India, the Sri and Bhu are the personal potencies of the Supreme Lord, as they are the personal potency of Narayana. Lakshmi Priya and Vishnu Priya are the personal potencies of Gaura. He's Krishna himself. And he took sannyas, much to their, unhappiness. Very difficult. So the question is, why did he do this? And there's external reasons and there's internal reasons. And the internal reason was, it was his purpose in coming. The internal reason for his coming was to experience the mood of Radharani in her love for Krishna. And how would have that worked in the Grihastha ashram? It would be incompatible. But it was his pastime for some period of time to live in the world as if he was one of us, including during his childhood pastimes. He was super scholar, superlative. He wasn't a weak-minded person. He was super scholar. And he left it all. He left his scholarship, in the mundane sense of scholarship, to take up the higher position of bhakti and unlimited expressions of devotion. And the topmost limit of that expression of devotion is the mood of the gopis. So his Leela was to enter into the Supreme Lord experiencing the mood of one who loves him. No other avatar of the Lord has exhibited like that. It's unique, and it's a mystery. And a corollary to all of this is, in this mood of the love of the resident of Vrindavan for Krishna, Upasana Vrajavadu Vargena Va Kalpita, in the mood of the residents of Vrindavan, they experienced love and separation. So what happened to his dear wife, Vishnupriya? She experienced love and separation from Krishna. She was experiencing that kind of love that he was distributing, and experiencing, in his own case, from the position of a lover of Krishna, or Radharani's love. I hope you caught it. So, in the illustration on the screen, there's Bhu and Sri Shakti. We also heard from Caitanya Bhagavat, the third is this Dham, or Navadvip Dham, is the Nila Shakti, Sri Bhu and Nila. For those of you that are familiar with Vaishnava literatures, Sri Bhu and Nila are essential spiritual potencies of the Supreme Lord. So Navadvip Dham is one of those three principal potencies. And the other two is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu fulfilling the purpose for which he came, which was experiencing the mood of love of the gopis, and specifically Radharani, their love towards Krishna, and not just reading about it, but experiencing it. Experiencing it to the degree that only Radharani can experience it. And he entered fully into that mood. That's the profound mystery of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. And by his taking of sannyas, now we're going to go to external reason again, and the external reason to establish Yuga Dharma. But he was also a reformer. One of the Reformation activities, if you know the history of India, prior to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance, Shankaracharya had appeared. And Shankaracharya was countered by Madhvacharya and Nimbarkacharya and Ramanujacharya and the great acharyas. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, similarly, by his position of being a sannyasi, he was able to diminish the influence of very prevalent non-devotional teaching at that time, during his time, very prevalent. So one of those persons was pictured here, is Prakasha Nanda Saraswati. You can read about it. There's a whole long section found in Chaitanya Charitamrita about Prakasha Nanda Saraswati's becoming a Vaishnav. But first it started criticizing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because as a sannyasi who took sannyas in the line of Shankaracharya, but his real purpose was something else. His real purpose was to teach Krishna Bhakti. So in teaching Krishna Bhakti, he didn't do what Mayavadi sannyasis do. And he didn't refrain from what Mayavadi sannyasis refrain from, specifically mixing with worldly people. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu conducted Sankirtan in Benares with hundreds and thousands of ordinary people. So Prakashananda spoke with him. You see in the painting, Lord Chaitanya agreed to a meeting. There's details of how that happened. And he went to the meeting place, the hall where they were, but after washing his feet, you can see in the painting in the lower left corner, there's a picture. What was the practice was they would put their shoes to the side, wash their feet, and then enter the hall. So he washed his feet and sat where they washed their feet. And where they washed their feet is an unclean place. And he sat down in the unclean place where they washed their feet. And Prakashananda Saraswati came forward and said, please don't sit there, come sit with us. But I'm not eligible to come sit with exalted personalities like all of you. So very, very humbly speaking, then their conversation began. And when their conversation began, he spoke in such a way that Prakashananda Saraswati, as you see in the background, here's another painting, thousands of sannyas followers. And in the end of their discussion, his followers and Prakashananda Saraswati became Vaishnavas. So his purpose, one of his external purposes in accepting sannyas was to bring people to the life of devotion to Krishna. When there's dharma shiglani, or discrepancy in dharma, he restored that discrepancy in dharma by presenting the proper teaching. And he did this from this position as a sannyasi. And not only Prakashananda Saraswati, we heard yesterday evening in detail about Lord Chaitanya's bringing the most learned scholar in all of India at the time, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. He was a householder, but he was the teacher or shiksha guru of thousands of sannyasis in the Shankaracharya Sampradaya line. And when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, became convinced in the devotional teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he also became a Vaishnava. And the tens of thousands of sannyasis also, because their teacher went that way. So there's something on the side of an external reason, but go back to why he accepted sannyas, why he married a second time, because it was part of his lila. The internal purpose of his appearance was to experience the love of Srimati Radharani. And the feelings that she has and her appreciation for the qualities in him that she alone can taste as she tastes. It's quite a mystery. Therefore, this same verse that we started with in the beginning, Namo Mahavadanyaya, Krishna Prema Pradayate, Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya, Namne Gaur Tattva Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya, who is more magnanimous than any other avatar, even Krishna himself, because he is bestowing freely what no one else has ever given, pure love of Krishna. So he did so in his household stage of life. He did so also in his with the assistance of Nitai, Lord Nityananda, and he engaged in his Sankirtan pastimes. And tomorrow we'll hear more about the full moon night in the month of Phalgun at which he appeared. And when he appeared, it's a detail. We'll discuss it more tomorrow again. But in Navadvip, at that time, people were not chanting Krishna's name. However, during this occasion of the lunar eclipse, everyone, half submerged in the Ganges water, calling out very loudly Krishna's name in a big crescendo. Just a little sharing, because I don't know if we'll have time for it tomorrow. Two things. One devotee did some research, and according to a NASA publication, National Aeronautics and Space Administration calculation, there was a lunar eclipse in the eastern part of India during this time to that time, verified by NASA. It's a real event, not just like a nice story. And there was another one. One year I was in Mayapur, 1974 or 75, something like that. I can't remember which year it was. And there was a full lunar eclipse. So it was really, everyone was excited. We get to experience a full lunar eclipse just like Lord Chaitanya's appearance on the Purnima day. So we went to the Ganges, all the ISKCON devotees, and what did we find? Hundreds of thousands of people. Like, where did they all come from? Hundreds of thousands of people. And as the eclipse started, everyone was rushing for the Ganges. And I thought, wow, people are going to drown. Because, crowds of people don't pay too much attention to etiquette. They just want to half submerge themselves in the Ganges water and call Krishna's name. And there was a huge, it was like a football game, this big noise of people calling Krishna's name in all directions. I got in the Ganges, said Hare Krishna, got back out real quick. Didn't want to get drowned in the Ganges. But it was like, where they all came from, I don't know. From the heavenly planets, maybe, I don't know. A lot of, hundreds of thousands. Wild. And chanting Krishna's name. Exactly what happened on the appearance. And when that, as the lunar eclipse was taking place, that's when he appeared. Because the whole of Navadvip was chanting Krishna's name. Perfect scenario for Lord Chaitanya's appearance. We'll hear some more about it tomorrow. This is the temple that was built by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. We'll hear some more about it tomorrow. This is the Murti underneath the neem tree where Jagannath Mishra and Mother Sachi were together when the child Nimai was born on Gaura Purnima day. And we'll hear a little bit more about his nice activities as a small child. So that's our discussion for this evening in preparation for Gaur Purnima for tomorrow. Now, I don't know if we have time. Who's our timekeeper? Do we have time for any discussion? 12 minutes. Gosh. I was like, beat the clock. I had to end the class on time. Any discussion from anyone?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. So when you asked for the examples, I was also thinking of Gautam Buddha. He was also married and then he left. So I was just thinking about that too. Completely renounced, completely renunciated. He just left just like that. So
Nice. Nice. Thank you for that. I don't know so much about that part of his life. I know much more about his teachings. Now, he was a prince. Are you sure he was married?
that's what we learned when we learned in school. We had like a story about him. So that's what I remember.
I'm not sure he was a prince. I'm not sure that what you heard in school is correct. I'm interested to find out. My understanding was, as a young prince, he was going about the kingdom of his father, and he saw what he saw, and there's so much suffering, and so I don't want any part of this. There must be an alternative, and that's when he went in another direction, besides kingly life. So I'm not sure what you heard in school is correct. Anybody here is a Buddha historian and knows the answer to that question? I'll research it. I'll find out. Yes.
Married to a princess called Yashodhara. He also had a son called Rahul.
Really? Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to look at. Send me whatever historical record you have, and I'd like to read it. If you find it, yeah. What? Wikipedia. That's not the most reliable source. Because people fellows that, they can contribute something and it's not reality checked. So it's nice to get some information. It's also nice to be double checked and from some more authoritative source in Wikipedia. That's my feeling about it.
Maharaj, I had read about that there are actually two Buddhas. The one which he's talking about is the one which came later. The Adi Buddha was the incarnation of Godhead who was not married. So that's what I have read in history.
Did you hear what he just said?
Yeah, I can send the reference because it's from our devotee community historian.
If you can get me that, I'd like to know.
Yes, Maharaj. I'll send it to Kyolo. He can send it to you.
Okay. Anything else? Little controversy is nice.
Prabhu, that, Maharaj, about the Bhu Shakti and
About the what? Bhu Shakti?
Bhu Shakti, yeah. So they were Lakshmi Priya and Vishnu Priya.
Yes.
Is there any connection? Like, is that again Radharani's expansion? Would we consider that?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. She wants to give you the microphone back. There's a nice verse amongst many nice verses in Caitanya Charitamrita. And I'm going to do another rah-rah. Get a Caitanya Charitamrita set in your home if you don't have one already. So, and they're available this evening, so ask. So there's a verse in Caitanya Charitamrita where it explicitly states that the goddesses of fortune and all of the Shaktis of the Supreme Lord, they're expansions of Radharani. The queens, the Lakshmis in Vaikuntha, and all the Sarup Shaktis of the Supreme Lord, they're expansions of Srimati Radharani. So there's the answer. And it's detailed and commented upon by our acharyas in other places, but that's a really nice source for that factual information. How we doing?
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for the class. One question that I had is there a reason why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not included in the avatars of Vishnu? We hear about the 10 Dashavatars, 10 avatars, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not included. Is there a reason why?
Yes. You want to know the reason? He's understood a detail you can get from reading the section in Chaitanya Charitamrita where Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and his brother-in-law Gopinathacharya are discussing, is Lord Chaitanya the personality of Godhead or not? It's in Madhya Lila chapter 6, I think. You have Chaitanya Charitamrita?
No problem.
Well, you can get it online. It's Veda-based. So part of that discussion is he's a hidden avatar or Chana avatar. And therefore, it's not broadcast like the Das avatar or even mentioned, but there's verses and verses and verses. So many verses that describe Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the personality of Godhead from so many sources, but not mentioning by name. They mention him by his qualities and his activities, Guna and Lila, not by name. So that's hidden.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, I think the children are a little restless, so I think we're going to end here. See if we want to make some announcements.
Hare Krishna, everyone. So big round of applause for His Holiness Prabhupada Swami.